What is Trees for Life Oregon? Why was it formed and by whom?
So, Trees for Life Oregon is an organization that's basically dedicated to trying to preserve and maintain our large form canopy trees in the city of Portland. And it was formed by Portland residents who have gone through, as volunteers, city training programs to become neighborhood tree stewards. So, neighborhood tree stewards are just folks who want to learn a lot about trees, get educated about them, learn about the city's ordinances and the rules regarding planting and maintaining of trees, what you can and cannot plant. And after that education, then serve in the local neighborhoods, talking to their neighbors and folks in the surrounding area, and being a touch point for people to get their questions answered, so that we basically extend the urban forestry staff for the city of Portland out into the neighborhoods. And that's a group of folks who came together concerned about what they were seeing as they did this neighborhood level work around trees, became concerned about the loss of trees that we were seeing as the city developed rapidly, and wanted to do something and formed this group, Trees for Life Oregon.
What are the biggest threats to Portland's large, healthy trees?
Well, there are a couple main threats to the large urban trees in Oregon. The first one, as we are a state that's receiving a lot of new residents, is the rapid development and infill that we're seeing, particularly in our residential neighborhoods. The lack of space that is available for large trees to grow is of concern. So many large existing trees are being lost as we see small single-family homes on bigger lots. Those trees are coming down as either large single-family homes are built, or as multiple family houses, duplexes, quadruplexes, and such are put on those same lots. And that's causing a lot of concern around, particularly in Portland, as those neighborhoods transition to more dense housing. The second issue is climate change. We see in Oregon, we've had a number of summers where there are longer and drier periods of drought, and those are taking a toll on trees. And so what we need to do is look at both of those things. How can we help our trees get through our longer, drier summers safely? And that's basically through paying more attention to irrigation and giving them water, and then looking at our development practices and rules to see if we can preserve space for those large existing trees.
How do you define large when you talk about large trees?
Well, in urban street tree, and let me say that large is defined in an urban setting as any tree that grows 50 feet or more at maturity. And typically those are trees that are going to live at least 75 years or longer if they're in ideal settings. So a small tree would be a tree that would not mature at more than 30 feet. Those are the small trees you can put under power lines. Moderate sized trees, kind of the middle range of trees, are anywhere from 30 to 50 feet at mature height, and those are good in, say, smaller strips that don't have overhead wires. But for the larger spaces where there are no overhead wires, and by that we mean maybe 6 foot wide planting strips in your street settings, we want to see those trees that will mature, provide the larger canopy, the broader shade pools that we need to keep our cities cool. That's what we mean by a large form tree or a large species tree. One that at its full maturity, when it's fully grown, is going to be a large, big, spreading tree that will provide multiple environmental benefits.
So how do large form or large species trees benefit us more than small species or small form trees?
Well, all trees, even small trees, provide some benefits. So if you only have room for a small tree, then plant a small tree in that space. Right tree, right space. But the larger the tree, the more we get of all the good things we want out of our trees. So for example, the larger the spreading canopy is, the more shade we have in the summer. So the broader the area of cooling, which can be up to 10 degrees cooler, the shading of the asphalt when a large tree stretches out over the street. Those are much more enhanced by the size of a large tree than they are with a small tree that creates only a tiny amount of shade. We also get more leaf surface area, so that larger canopy is going to provide more opportunity for places for pollutants to be trapped, the little particulates that are in the air can be trapped on the surface of those leaves and can therefore be pulled out of the air. We also know that trees are great at baffling noise. Well, the larger the tree, the more leaf area or needle area, the more noise is going to be intercepted, and it's going to make our neighborhoods quieter places to live, reducing stress. Also, larger trees simply provide more habitat for wildlife. There's more places to nest, and there's going to be, if a tree is a flowering tree, there's going to be that much more nectar because the tree is offering hundreds and hundreds of flowers in a large canopy than it would, say, if it was just a small form tree, say like a small dogwood. So these are all the benefits that we get. The larger the tree, the greater the amount of benefits. May not be different in kind, but certainly in the volume of benefits that we get is greatly increased when we retain or plant and grow these larger form species.
Is our existing tree code strong enough to protect Portland's large, healthy trees?
Well, Portland's trying to balance the need for more housing as we rapidly grow and bring in more residents with the need to have that housing be affordable and in a livable condition. The neighborhood's livability has also been a long-standing goal that most Portland residents share. They want to live someplace that is healthy and safe and comfortable. And so in trying to balance those things, the city has a difficult job. I think folks like Trees for Life Oregon, what we're trying to do is to make sure that in the quest to meet the goal for more affordable housing, we're not sacrificing the livability of those new residents when they come to live in those housing developments and those housing areas that have been redeveloped, that they also have the benefit of healthy and safe and livable neighborhoods. So we basically believe that all people who live in an urban area are entitled to those benefits. It's what draws so many people to come to Portland in the first place, is they like the greenery and the large trees and all the things that it does for us. And we think that every Oregonian, regardless of income, regardless of whether they're having to live in a triplex or a duplex or an apartment, should have access to nearby green nature. And the best benefits are not from tiny small trees that are sort of an afterthought, but from large spreading canopy trees that are going to provide for them the source of contact with nature, reduce noise, reduce stress. Just being around trees has been shown to reduce people's stress levels and stress hormones. If you were to test their blood, people who are living around trees nearby, even if it's not in their own immediate yard, if it's in a yard nearby, are benefiting from those large trees. And so that's something that every Portlander, everyone who lives in a city in Oregon should have the access to.
There seems to be a conflict, which is real or perceived, around affordable housing versus trees. What would you say about that?
We at Trees for Life Oregon don't believe that this is an either or choice, that you can either have housing that you can afford or you can have a livable neighborhood. Why should those things be mutually exclusive? We believe that with careful design and thought, space can be preserved even in more dense living situations as residential areas fill in more, that with careful thought we can preserve those valuable large form trees. And it can be, we've seen developments from certain developers who are building more dense housing, larger housing stock, but they're doing it in such a way that they've left room for a tree in a yard by perhaps changing the footprint slightly, maybe adding bump outs on the other side of the house so that they retain the same amount of square footage for living space, but provide that living space for those large trees. And that's really what we are all about, is finding creative solutions and innovative ways in which we can have both of those things, because we do need affordable housing, and we do need that affordable housing to be in neighborhoods that still retain enough tree canopy to make them livable.
Is there an example you can think of where there's construction going on but that large tree has been retained?
So if you go to our treesforlifeoregon.org website, you can see a variety of different developments around the city of Portland where developers have, with thought, carefully designed to retain a large existing tree, This can be in apartment buildings, or it can be in single-family homes or duplexes. So we've tried to seek out developers that are doing this right and carefully, and having the benefits of being able to provide that new housing stock for folks, but doing it in a way that preserves these beneficial trees in that neighborhood. And ultimately, those residents, we think it makes that that housing stock actually more valuable. People have been shown to be willing to pay more to live in places that do have large trees. So in cases where we're subsidizing the housing, it's even more important, I think, for those low-income people to have access to those large trees. Because if they're not able to afford to go out to the natural forests on their vacations or on their weekends, they may be confined, they and their families may be more confined right to their immediate neighborhood. So retaining those trees right on the blocks where people live, where they can see them every day, walk past them, notice the flowers, hear the birds singing in those trees, having the benefits of the cleaner air right on their block, having the benefits of lower heat in the summer because there's more shade. That is something that is probably even more important for people that are seeking the more affordable housing stock, because they have fewer options for getting out into the wilder natural forests.
And finally, what can homeowners or renters do to help trees survive summer drought?
So, although it rains a lot in Oregon, what we have been experiencing as the climate has changed, and especially the first 2 decades of this century, has been longer and drier and more frequent summer droughts, and droughts at an unusual time, drier spells of the year, even in the spring, for example. And that's hard on our non-native trees, which make up the majority of our urban forests. So what Portlanders and others in Oregon, especially in Western Oregon, can do is to remember to provide water to those trees to get them through those dry periods. Now, people are pretty good about a newly planted tree knowing it needs water. For the first couple of years, people are pretty attentive to that. But what we found with these more intense dry spells, and probably we're going to get more intense heat waves as well, which will dry out the soils faster, what people often fail to do is to realize that rainfall in the summer is not really adequate for trees that come from other parts of the world, particularly those that have summer rainfall, like trees from the eastern United States, a lot of the trees from eastern Asia. Those trees are going to require some additional water, supplemental water during the summer. Now, for folks in the drier eastern parts of Oregon or places like California and Arizona, in order to have any trees at all, they're used to watering in the summer. It's just us Oregonians that have kind of felt that, oh, the rainfall takes care of it, who are going to have to train ourselves to know that at least for the first 10, 20 years, most of our non-native trees are going to require additional supplemental water. Might only have to be once a month. We have a Soak It Week campaign at the last week of July and the last week of August, typically our driest times of the year here, where we're reminding people to give your tree some water. And if you want to know how much water to give at which stage of life of your tree, you can go to our treesforlifeoregon.org website, and we'll have all the instructions you need.
Thank you.